Hey everyone, this is Heidi again, coming back to you with another true crime story commentary. And this week I'm actually going to be talking about a case that some of you might be familiar with. It sort of depends on, clearly when you were born, whether or not you were paying attention to the news at this point in time. But the story, like I mentioned last week, it is actually called the Johnny Gosch 1982 case, and specifically the form of media I watched related to it was the Netflix documentary series entitled Who Took Johnny? Now, for those of you who are fans of this genre, you may have seen Who Took Johnny pop up in your Netflix queue, which is what happened to me. But just to give you some basics about the story, like I mentioned, this happened in 1982. Specifically, it was Sunday, September 5, 1982, and a little boy named Johnny Gosch went missing from his West Des Moines, Iowa neighborhood, actually while he was doing his morning paper route. Probably around 5 or 6 in the morning is when he originally went out to deliver papers, and his parents soon began receiving complaints that neighbors did not receive their paper. So fast forward, multiple hours. Obviously, his parents are deeply concerned, and they contact their local law enforcement, the West Des Moines police, to report their son missing. Now, between all of this time when they report him missing and, of course, when they're talking to other neighbors about the case, the interesting thing is people right away started coming forward, witnesses started coming forward saying, hey, I saw this man in a blue truck talking to your son a few days ago, he looks suspicious. Or, hey, I actually happened to be awake waiting for my paper, and I noticed that there was this truck, driving really fast throughout the neighborhood and blowing through stop signs, and I thought it was weird. So the crazy thing about this case up front is, unlike, unfortunately, a lot of other missing children's cases, there was actually witnesses who saw what happened because apparently, the Gosches lived in a very affluent neighborhood and they had a lot of neighbors. Clearly, that's why he was doing a paper route. So really, the difficulty with this case, the thing that comes into play is the fact that back in the 1980s, 1982 specifically, law enforcement in the United States had this policy where they actually couldn't pursue a missing child, missing persons case until at least 72 hours had passed, and primarily that was because the police got a lot of reports of children who had simply run away. Johnny Gosch's mother, Noreen Gosch, was very, very upset because she was like, there were people who might have taken my son. Why aren't you chasing down these leads? And the police were kind of just brushing her off like, sorry, ma'am, we have to wait at least 72 hours. We can't do anything. So as most of you who lived through this case know, this was actually the major focusing event, that's what they call it in the field of crisis communications, a focusing event, where it ended up because of all the trauma, really, that Noreen had to go through with knowing her son was taken and not having anyone at least follow up on it and try to get her son back. This is actually what led to a lot of legislation and a lot of rules that now say that if you report your child missing, the police pretty much have to start looking into it a lot sooner than 72 hours. I actually don't remember off the top of my head if the ruling said that they have to go out and look for children right away as soon as they're reported, but I can go ahead and look up the original details here. Paul Bonacci actually comes into this case and really plays one of the crucial roles, I would say, in terms of the documentary. It's probably the primary climax in the documentary. So basically, he was serving time in prison related to another charge, and he came forward to his lawyer and confessed that he was abducted into this child prostitution ring, and he had actually helped to abduct Johnny Gosch when he was 12 years old. He had actually participated in the child's kidnapping. Now, there was a lot of controversy surrounding this because the thing is, a lot of people were just saying, you know, he's a prisoner, he's serving time, he's crazy. Why would he be coming forward 7 years later and mentioning this? Because this was in 1989 specifically that Paul Bonacci comes forward. So basically it was a whole thing where Noreen Gosch, of course Johnny's mother, went to visit him in prison, talked to him, asked him some specific questions, you know, to see if he actually had seen her son, asking things like, you know, did he have any type of birthmarks, you know, very specific things that really only a mother would know. And a lot of it, he actually supposedly volunteered himself. So information, for instance, like he was saying how Johnny used to always talk about the fact that he knew these advanced breathing techniques and yoga techniques. Well, it turns out Noreen herself is actually a yoga teacher. She actually is still currently a yoga teacher. And so he was bringing up a lot of things that just made her really believe him. And the crazy thing is, like I said, this is sort of the central conflict or climax in the documentary. And the reason I say that is because a lot of people were saying, you know, criticizing, saying, this guy's crazy, you know, why is he mentioning this? Like, there's no point. He's probably just, you know, trying to feed off of a grieving, you know, mother, things like that. But he ends up telling the police as a part of all of this, talking about the child prostitution ring he was a part of. He says, yeah, okay, you guys don't believe me. Well, there's actually this house in Colorado, and I can show you exactly where it is. And I can show you exactly the spot underneath the house, this hidden sort of underground, subterranean, fake basement where they kept all of the children in case anyone would come and visit the man at his house or check up on him, or, you know, if anyone was asking questions. He's like, yeah, just take me there. I can show you where it is. And next thing you know, in the documentary, you see pictures of this house in Colorado just sitting there off the side of the mountains, no other houses around it. And the police, sure enough, discovered this really sketchy underground dugout basement. And it's crazy because it's not like an actual basement that's a part of the house. It's literally just looks like a hole that someone dug underneath the house that has no ventilation. It's not connected to the rest of the house, like I said, so it's almost like a crawl space where the kids would have to crawl under the house to get in there. And who knows how many kids this guy was keeping under his house. And the worst part is, you know, of course the cops could say, well, you found us, you brought us to this house, you showed us this hiding spot, but that doesn't prove anything. You know, the guy could have been storing meat or vegetables or something under the house. Well, it turns out there was all these little carvings within these posts that were holding the little basement, subterranean basement thing up. There were these wooden posts holding it up so it wouldn't collapse. And there were little kids' names and carvings carved into the wall with like sticks or pens or little things that they might have had. And, you know, it was just crazy. It was heartbreaking, and it was crazy at the same time because it was just like, no one's believing this guy, and yet look what he led you to. And then, of course, when the police looked into it and went to go charge the person who owned the house, it was this situation where the person who previously owned it had left it and abandoned it, and the guy changed his name, and all of this other sketchiness, you know what I mean? Like, it wasn't like a normal situation where you could just pick up the phone and be like, okay, who is it that owns this house? We're charging you with running a child prostitution ring. No, of course that doesn't happen. Of course the guy is long gone, either dead, changed his name, who knows. They didn't really mention the documentary. They just said that the police were unable to charge him and track him down, the previous owner of the house. So that was the one thing that really I thought was like the bombshell in this case and was crazy. And let's see if there's anything else specific that was really what got my attention, what really freaked me out about this case. I mean, obviously, talking about child prostitution and child prostitution ring in general is really freaky and just horrible to think about, especially for Noreen. I mean, imagine your child being kidnapped and then all of a sudden you have to live with the reality that more than likely he is been kidnapped and forced into child prostitution. I mean, that's awful. That's awful. So the last thing I wanted to mention is, let's see here. Oh, okay. The last bombshell in this case relates to, this is actually another huge bombshell in this case, which is why if you are a huge fan of true crime documentaries, I would really recommend that you watch this one. Once again, that's Who Took Johnny on Netflix. And I will leave possibly a few links down below. I'll mention those for you at the end of the video. But yeah, so the final bombshell in this case relates to the fact that Noreen Gosch, of course Johnny's mother, actually ended up having to testify in a specific court appearance. And as a part of the court appearance, that case she was testifying for, of course, they were asking her about her missing son, you know, just trying to basically establish that her son that was kidnapped and had been missing for years and years. And one of the questions that the attorney asked her was, you know, when was the last time you've seen your son? Well, of course, you know, being on the stand, she doesn't want to commit perjury. So instead of simply saying, you know, I haven't seen him for the past 10 years, 15 years, however long it had been, she drops this huge bombshell and reveals that in 2006, she supposedly saw Johnny. He came to her door and came to visit her, and she talked to him for about an hour and a half. Now, the crazy thing about this, obviously, you know, none of this has been confirmed. It comes from her testimony within that case. But essentially what she said is she got a knock on her door in the middle of the night when she went to go answer it. It happened to be this older man, about 27 years old, so the same age Johnny would have been at that point. And he was with another man. It was him and another man. So somehow, you know, he says, apparently he says, it's me, Mom. You know, I wanted to talk to you. I can't really stay. You know, I'll get in trouble if they know where I'm at. And so somehow she just finds it in herself to let him in. One of the key things was she said just by looking at him in the eyes, she could recognize that it was his eyes and it was him. So she let him in. They talked for a little bit. He said, yeah, you know, I'm okay, but I can't tell you exactly what I'm doing now or where I'm living or anything like that because, you know, they'll find me and I'll get in huge trouble and they'll kill me and all this stuff. And it's just crazy because, I mean, first of all, it's crazy that she would even admit that. I understand that she was, you know, testifying in court and she could have obviously gotten in trouble if she ended up exposing this and, you know, the court found out that she didn't talk about it when she was asked directly about it in court. But there's a lot of, once again, conflict surrounding this whole incident, supposed incident, because, you know, basically her husband, whom she got divorced with in 1993, her husband actually, you know, has kind of come out and said, like, there's no proof that this happened. I don't know whether it did happen or not, but so that's basically the big mystery is she alleges it happens. She actually ended up writing a book where she discussed it called Why Johnny Can't Come Home, you know, basically alleging that he was for sure taken into this child prostitution ring and he can't come home because obviously the group will kill him, maybe even hurt or kill her. So it's just, the whole thing is crazy, and to be honest, Noreen Gosch and also John Gosch, the father of Johnny, are both still alive and still keeping on. Obviously, the tragedy has greatly affected probably both of them, but especially Noreen, because you see multiple interviews with her in the documentary, and you see her from the time she actually lost Johnny in 1982 all the way until the current day, 2014, 2015-ish, I think. And it just really makes you, if nothing else, I think it really makes you appreciate what you have in life. Because, I mean, look at this situation. Like the title of her book suggests, more than likely her son is never going to come home. The case is currently still listed as an unsolved kidnapping case. And, really, although she's done multiple things and she's helped a lot of parents who would have had to go through the same agony she had of waiting, 72 hours to find out or to even attempt to get their children back. And the reality is she's probably not going to get her son back at this point. So, but what I would like to do in the interest of course, furthering her case, since, Noreen Gosch is still around and she is still a very important advocate when it comes to missing/kidnapped children, what I would like to do is provide a link at the bottom of this video to the Johnny Gosch Foundation, and that way people can donate towards her cause and also possibly find out a little more specific details on the case, because what I did here today is just kind of went through, gave you guys the basic version of what happened and talked a little bit about the bombshells within the documentary itself. So go ahead and click down below to donate, and thanks for watching this video. Bye, guys.